Time to take a look now at what's been happening on the continent this week. Sudan's ruling military council, protesters and opposition groups have signed a political accord. The power-sharing deal is meant to lead the country into democracy following 3 decades of autocratic rule. Also this week, the chief prosecutor of a UN tribunal has accused South Africa of failing to cooperate in the arrest of Felician Kabunga over his role in the Rwandan genocide. It's the first time South Africa has been accused of failing to assist in the arrest of a fugitive sought by the court. Kabunga is accused of financing the genocide. To discuss this and developments in the DRC, we can now bring in Africa analyst Jean Boissa. Jean, a very good afternoon. Well, good morning to you. Thank you for coming in. Let's begin then in Sudan. This accord signed on Wednesday by the Transitional Military Council, protesters and opposition groups. Does it render the crisis in the country finally put to bed?
Good afternoon, Tembekile. Thank you for having us on ENCA. We're talking about Africa, but first of all, because you had Johnny Clegg, who died recently, we're celebrating his life, but I would like just to say if there were a face of love, then Johnny Clegg symbolized the face of love in the world and in Africa mainly. And because we're talking about Sudan and talking about love, this peace deal that they are signing between the military and the civilians, I do think at this point of time, African leaders, all of them, I'm also calling upon the artists to unite so that we can, at a given point, in the same way we sang in the 1980s about the crisis that was in Ethiopia, we sing about the crisis that is happening in Africa and Sudan and many other countries in Africa. But the peace that they have signed, is it on paper? Are they going to respect? That's the quest and the wonders and the question that we're asking ourselves. If they respect that, that's fine. But if not, it is important that as African people, we jeer beyond what we call our Ubuntu, under the Palava tree, and find a solution. Because the solution is in the heart. It is not on a piece of paper. Already, there are those that are against, because from the civilian part, the citizens are already opposed, and they have postponed for 3 days. They will convene a new date. So we need to wait until the new date is coming for them to meet with the military. And the time they are taking is at the benefit of the military rather than at the benefit of the civilian. And it's really depressing now.
Let me ask you this then. In this accord signed this past Wednesday, the civilian transitional government would be in power for a maximum 3 years. But is that enough time to get everything in order ahead of what would be the first, if you will, democratic election in Sudan?
Well, what is time, in fact? Time can be tomorrow. Time can be any day. Time can be one month, provided that everything that we do in life is done in good faith. If it is done in good faith, even 1 year is enough for people to realize the peace, because peace should be in our hearts as Africans.
Let's talk about this news from the UN tribunal this week accusing South Africa of failing to cooperate in the arrest of Felician Kabunga. He is said to finance the Rwandan genocide at a point. Is he even in South Africa at this point?
Well, we don't know whether he's in South Africa. This is the problem. Even if he were in South Africa, he is first of all an African. And the UN tribunal or the ICC, all these tribunals that were put in place, these citizens, they travel also overseas. And I can give you a precedent where one of the Congolese guys went in Belgium. They did not arrest him, but they want him, when he returned in Congo, to be arrested in Congo. For God's sake, he's there. Arrest him. So sometimes they want to put the blame on Africans. And that's why I'm asking every African to be wise now, because we were filled with wisdom in Africa. And it is important that we question the way all these international regulations are being done.
Let's jump around then. Another big issue from the continent this week has been the declaration of the Ebola crisis in the DRC. Finally, a crisis of global concern is what the UN is calling it at this stage, raising worries that we will see travel and trade restrictions on the DRC. But can those actually be avoided, given that should Ebola spread, it would lead to a serious crisis in much of the region?
We've spoken about this Ebola on this platform some times ago. And I think it is important that we ask our questions, and maybe education system need to review the history, because Ebola, it's a bacteria, it's a virus, and these viruses started mainly in the 18th century when they started the researches and the studies over a bacteriological war against who? If it is against Africans, and in this point of time against the Congolese people, I ask myself, why is it only Congo that is being targeted? Why is it only the mining sector that is being targeted? It doesn't cross the border, but Uganda is putting a shield and trying to implement the vaccine in Uganda. Why is that vaccine not working in the Congo?
But isn't that what this declaration from the United Nations is supposed to help do? It's supposed to open up, essentially, the delivery of aid and other resources to the DRC. And should they come, is there confidence at this stage that they will reach the right people? Because this crisis has dragged on for months now. Over 1,700 people known to have died, yet there doesn't seem to be a clear strategy, at least internally, to stop the spread of Ebola.
Well, there might not be a strategy internally, because there's no government in the Congo, and I might be a whistleblower here, because it is important that we have, first of all, a government in the Congo that will implement the policies in order to halt that Ebola spread in the Congo. Without a government, nothing can be done. They're busy dividing each other. They're busy fighting each other in the Congo. So there's nothing. And I wonder, the international community, who are they dealing, who are they negotiating with in terms of this Ebola crisis? If it is the former Minister of Health, it is important that, first of all, we bring peace in the Congo, because peace and stability in the Congo might be the key solution for that Ebola not to be spread and not to be an emergency crisis for the entire Africa. That's my solution for me. Peace and stability in the Congo.
Let's stay in the DRC, and very briefly, Thomas Lubanga, the militia leader, now the court upholding an earlier ruling that he should pay about $10 million in reparations to many of the victims who suffered during his reign of terror. One of the few people who was successfully convicted by the International Criminal Court. Will these people actually get this money, given that this is a man who's incarcerated? Not much is known about his funds.
Well, I think Thomas Lubanga is just a middleman. Condemning those middlemen, it's nonsense for me. It is important that we go for the big guns, those who financed him, first of all, to run this war. And I also question whether he's really a Congolese, because they call him a Congolese. I was highlighting the fact that in the Congo for the past 25 years, or since 1984, we have not had a proper identification in the Congo. So anybody can call himself Thomas Lubanga, Thomas Sir Germain Katoko, just because there's no government there to say this is a Congolese and that not a Congolese. But coming to your point about the 10 million that he has to pay for those victims, 425 children that need to be given the money so that they can reintegrate the society, that's good. But ask that money to the perpetrator, to the executioner of the atrocities, possibly Joseph Kabila himself. We have seen lately with Bosco Tanganda that he has named Joseph Kabila as one of the instigators of the atrocities that were happening in the Congo.
But very briefly, Jean-Baptiste, does the $10 million exist is the question.
But if he doesn't have the masters, they need to fund him in the same way they funded him. They gave him the guns, they gave him all the ammunitions to go and kill and perpetrate the atrocities and employ those children that were less than 15 years old.
Jean-Baptiste, Africa analyst, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Great having you.